was also written to the ministry. The question is, and as I speak with you, all the electoral materials that were supposed to take place at Makurdi was still in our possession as an exhibit, and nothing, I repeat, nothing out of that was used. So the question is, who conducted the election? Who were the members of the electoral committee? Which materials were used?
Very good. Those are three questions that I need you to answer.
Now, I want to start with this. You see, the problem we have, I'm so lucky these people trained me. And it's so unfortunate that we are on the other side of the fence now. Let me start with this. First and foremost, when you have a committee, the chairman is the head of that committee. The electoral committee that he is talking about, Billy Tafawa Balewa, was the chairman of that committee. He was part of that election. That now, the two of them have been missing a point that is very, very critical. The ministry, when we have the electoral committee, the ministry is represented in that electoral committee. And it is very clear, according to our constitution, and the national youth policy supports that role that they play. The ministry is an umpire. The ministers present at any meeting of the youth council is honorary. He does not have a stake in the matter. So now what a lot of people have said is the minister declared. Why would the minister declare me vice president of Southwest? I don't know him. I have never met him. I'm sure he doesn't even know my name. These are issues we need to look at. Now, he said something that is very critical. You see, he who must come to equity must come with clean hands. The said secretary of that electoral committee, who absconded in Makurdi, said that they must have been sworn in 14 days before. They weren't sworn in. He didn't complain at that particular point in time because things were going the way he wanted. Now that things don't go your way does not mean that it is wrong. Now let's go back to Mina that he has been talking about. In Mina, the ministry was not represented in the electoral committee and they still went ahead to have an election. Before Mina, 2 days before Mina, we had an injunction validly issued by a competent court of law to stop the Mina Congress. They went ahead with the Mina Congress. Now people continue to blame other people when they have done the same thing. Like I have said, he who must come to equity must come with clean hands. Now let's assume that in Makurdi we did something that was absolutely wrong. Does too wrong to make it right? I think that the proper thing for them to have done was to have gone to court to challenge that action. But they decided, in fact, I am so disappointed in the Niger State governor. I don't want to mention names because I don't want to bring personalities into issues.
We're going to come back to the Mina and the Niger State governor, but I also want to find out from you now. He did mention about the minister calling him and saying certain candidates should be elected. You were elected in that Congress. Who sponsored you and why were you elected? Who was behind you being elected?
Very good. I want to say, Dynamite Ewedemi was the one who nominated me for that election.
That's Dynamite Ewedemi?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, as a matter of fact...
Did you have any dealings with the minister, the former minister?
I have never met him in my life, personally. And when we were having a meeting with him after our inauguration, I didn't even have an opportunity to talk to him one-on-one. I have never spoken to him in my life. I don't have any dealings with him. I'm not even a card-carrying member of his party. Not to talk of probably the affiliation...
But the man who was elected president obviously was his candidate.
I don't know. Nobody ever told me that. Nobody ever told me that. So the relationship basically between the ministry and the youth council is a complementary role. The ministry is supposed to support us logistically and provide funding where necessary.
Now, he touched on something there which is very important, and it's something I also read up and heard about over the last week, with the Niger State governor being heavily involved with the elections in Mina, and him sponsoring it and funding it completely. How much of a role did he and the funds he provided play in your decisions?
No, it's a norm in National Youth Council of Nigeria. And by the special grace of God, every one of them happens to have been a past leader of the council, and I have trained most of them. And it's, even at Ondo, when the election could not take place, the same thing. It's a norm that any hosting state must support, the process of election. So there's nothing absolutely there. But again, before I go further, I want to say this. The National Youth Development Policy and the Constitution of the National Youth Council of Nigeria, the policy clearly stated that the ministry has no role in the affairs of the council, that it can only provide logistics. And I want to quote from the Constitution here. Now, it says, the absence of the ministry in charge of youth development from any meeting of the youth council where notice of meetings was duly given shall not in any way invalidate any of the proceedings and resolutions made at such meetings or Congress. We do not need the ministry to validate the affairs of the youth council. So the absence of the ministry has absolutely nothing to do with it. And like you ask, the the Niger state government only provided a platform for Nigerian youth to do justice to the injustice that happened at Makurdi, and that's exactly what happened. And in the next few weeks, we're going to circularize it. The event that took place in a documentary format, what happened at both at Makurdi and at Mina, like what he said, most of the secret meetings unknown to the minister that were recorded. So everybody is going to say it. So so the government of Niger State only provided a platform, and it has been there. And I can say it very clearly: for over 35 years, I have been involved. There's no Congress of the Council that I have not been involved in. And I can tell you, it is the role of the state government, and that's exactly what Niger State government has done.
I'm actually going to come back to that thing you just talked now, because it's something I want to end with. But I want to go to Wale now. You have been president of this council, and one thing that we young people like to shout about a lot is the fact that the older generation have ruined this country. How you look at all of this and the sort of mess that you're outgoing president, and you're going to leave basically the organization in a mess.
Yeah.
What does that say about you and the sort of legacy that the youth of Nigeria are going to be moving forward with?
I thank you very much. I think that is the major reason why I'm standing on my feet. To say that either Mina or Makurdi, the two, they are factions. And my point is this. There was no election in Makurdi. But Mina was an aftermath, is a protest election. It was an aftermath of what happened in Makurdi. The Nigerian youth decided to. And that was why I said, for me, I was not against Makurdi. Mina, I was even physically present in Mina, but not part of the electioneering process. Because the minister believes he's all in all, and nobody can checkmate him as at that period. So it was a protest. And now, we have gotten to a level that the minister has been sacrificed. And the only way forward is to bring all the stakeholders together and let us move forward. And that is why, for me, as a transiting president, I think there's no legacy I will put down without having a proper transition. I'm not against.
So you're saying all of these elections are going to be nullified and the new election is going to be held again?
Even when you see the report of Ruben Abati, according to you, it talks about fractionalization. It's so clear. And Mina was mentioned there. It's not like they only talked about Makurdi. The president's name was used. That's the fact. They were saying that it's the president that gave them order to go and deliver that particular candidate called Shendam. But until the president got to know that they were using his name, there was no action. And we know what we did before we could get to that level. So for anybody now to hold on to power and say, okay, anybody can keep saying that I'm the president. Even the one that declared himself in Akure is still claiming to be president of National Youth Council. So why did all of you, if truly you are elected for the purpose of developing the youth of this country, why can't you drop whatever is in your hand and let's go back to a Congress and let Nigerian youth?
But when does your tenure end, and do you have the rights with your constitution, or does he have the right to still sit as president if all of this has happened?
No. As far as law is concerned,
it's not.
I'm sorry. Okay. As far as law is concerned, he is not the president, because this is what happened.
So who's running the youth council right now?
That's the issue. The issue is this: prior to now, when he was elected, it was a process of a ruling in the court, and the same court came and nullified his election. And I also party to that.
Courts never nullify my election.
Please, here. Everything is here.
Court never. Bring it out. Court never nullify my election.
Just hold on, please. Now nullify election, and we now have what we call a consent judgment. A transition committee was put in place for 6 months, which eventually they spent over 1 year. And by virtue of this constitution, it says the moment your tenure expires, you are automatically dissolved, as in spite of the fact that they spent over a year. Now their tenure, in spite of the fact that, okay, people follow that, ended as at Makurdi. And a new transition committee was put in place. And the question is now, if we say there's going to be an election, who is going to call that election? Who is going to call that Congress? Because the only authentic ESCO in place is what happened at Mina. Even the board of trustees were represented, international and national observers were there, And for the first time in the history of the council, the board of trustees were represented at that.
Obviously, the